Well, it's a gorgeous Thursday.
A gorgeous Thursday. It's December 16th, 2021. Welcome aboard, folks. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We are episode 539.
Yeah, we figured that out.
Inching our way ever so closer to Christmas, and a little bit of a breather, a little bit of break from Mike and I in the back end of the year. Enjoy Christmas with the holidays, friends, family. Gifts, presents, whatever you people do that celebrate Christmas hard, but we're gonna do that. It is a beautiful day. Looks like a beautiful week or two. Hope you've had a good week so far. We are getting our recording a little bit ahead of time, so this is obviously we are doing this actually on the Monday prior, and it was good to hear that most everybody stayed safe. We had some unreal tornadoes this previous weekend that hit the South for the most part, and we have a large majority of our athletes and our listener base are in like the Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee region. My whole family's in Tennessee, and it was a crazy experience, and just kind of nuts to read about and see all the devastation. So if you're listening, we hope you all were able to stay safe and you came out relatively unscathed. Our family had like just some minor damage and power outages, but I know a lot of people just barely got by. I know you went through some of that when you lived in East Nashville a few times. Like, it's just kind of odd how you never really think of the South, like right there in that, especially Nashville, like the East Nashville area, to be like, it's like Tornado Valley. It's become kind of, and what was it, like 10 or 15 years ago when it just blew straight through downtown? You just don't see that much with downtown big cities. And I know it hit Bowling Green really, really hard, and some other areas and some plants, and obviously, so I hope you guys are doing okay, and our thoughts are with you guys, and if you need anything, always reach out to us.
Yeah, no kidding, man. It was, I woke up to text because it happened overnight, right?
Yeah, middle of the night,
you doing
like
all right? Because everybody was my buddy, like 3 days before, texted me. He's like, "Hey, man, we got some big storms coming in this weekend."
Somebody else mentioned the same thing. I was like, whatever. So weathermen, they're always wrong. I was like, no big deal.
Yeah, but I literally slept through it, but I remember hearing the wind pretty hard on my, bedroom door, to the balcony. But it was,
wind, man. It scares me because you can't see it.
I know.
It's but yeah, hopefully you guys were good. I'll do a more positive, cheery note. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general, so we value and appreciate you. We cover it all. We cover swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps. We do race previews. Sometimes I'm the occasional guest. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through personally and how our training is going. We go through our life in general, since that's what the majority of the podcast is about. It's the underlying theme we all have that connects us, not just triathlon, but just trying to make our way through life. We also work with a wide range of athletes, from beginners to elite level amateurs across the globe, so we can usually peruse through Training Peaks and reading through the comments and just take the general vibe of our athlete base and use that for topics to kind of drive the discussion of the podcast of the day. But then we also frequently go into our Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group. If you want to be a part of that conversation, just answer one simple question. We'll let you in. That's going to be the driver for today as we tidy up some of the Q&As. We'll just drop in there and, hey, you got any questions? Let it rip, and we'll get to those usually in order and try to get to them as best we can. We're kind of picking and choosing right now to get things through and knocked out so we can get ahead and take our break for December. But that's it. We hope you, we're definitely not experts. We're not professionals. We're just two guys trying to share our knowledge and experience, and hopefully you can apply it to yourself in your own life, not in a copy and paste way, but, just take little bits here and there and make it your own journey and make it something that's valuable to you. Think through things on your own. Mike and I have obviously made a ton of mistakes, gone through a lot of obstacles, but also had a lot of success. So, and that's the reason we kind of did this podcast, was to have our own conversation and talk through things and hopefully allow you the opportunity to avoid some of the same pitfalls and grow in the sport as we have for 15 years. And that's why we also have no sponsors and no ads. But we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, I was trying to think if I had made any mistakes.
Today?
Yeah, no kidding.
or in the last Yeah, since we've been working together.
Yeah, if you're looking for some guidance, the club program is
out
there.
Yes, coming to closely to a deadline. So if you are interested in the club membership, the Club Hub package, or the Club Plus, head over to our website, C26triathlon.com. It's got all the info you need on there. And you click on the coaching tab and click on the club button for more info on that. Or if you have any more specific in-depth questions, you can always reach Mike directly, crushingiron@gmail.com.
Yeah, hit me up.
The Capitan of that.
I'm the club administrator.
He's the club administrator extraordinaire.
Yeah, I'm catching up on it. I'm pretty close to being up to speed. If you just joined, I'll be getting with you here shortly. So a lot of people coming in.
Yeah, and listen, regardless if you're doing the club or coaching, whatever, very few people are dialed in right now. Like, I saw it kind of, cruising through Training Peaks this morning, checking back to the weekend. And you're going through the week, people are like, listen, I'm just going to kind of be not going off the grid. They're like, I'm just going to be freelancing it here for the next little bit. And it's encouraged. Like this is not the time. It is just kind of funny how many more demands and responsibilities most athletes have in their personal and professional life once the end of the year and Christmas rolls around. It's like, parties, festivities, get-togethers. You got people celebrating Christmas like this last weekend, with like different family. You got families, families spread out. You got, if you're married, you have spouses, families who might live in different parts of the country. You got to visit, you got to travel. And if you got kids, you got to carry them around. Then kids are out of school and they're out of school for like 3 weeks. It just brings on a whole heap of like different kind of like life demands, responsibilities, and stress that we really aren't, wired for, in my opinion. But we kind of go through, and it's stressful, it's demanding, and I think people try to, really try hard to be on their best, P's and Q's when it comes to holidays and Christmas time and seeing family and doing things and, making sure that their, kids are buttoned up with their, Sunday best when they go to the, these things. It's just a lot. It really is a whole lot. When you think about going through the entire year and like the end of the year, you would much rather just kind of like, go to a beach and veg out for 2 weeks and, read a few books and hang out with some friends and rekindle and refresh your spirit and be ready for a rockin' next year. But instead, it's like the most stressful part of the year that we choose to like end it with. And then like, in the middle of that, let's write down a few things to give you some life goals for, 2022. And then we'll just kind of flip the script, and then we expect you to be perfect starting January 1. So it's a lot. So give yourself a break, show yourself some grace. And if you want some of that, tune into our podcast. We are full of that.
Yeah, we're full of grace. And I couldn't agree more with that, man. It's a tough time. And traveling and just, trying to buy gifts and,
we're not getting anything again, right? For
the
10th consecutive year. Okay, good. Perfect.
Just write me a check.
We'll write each other a check after this. How about that? We'll write you a little Christmas bonus. Maybe we'll have one of these. Maybe we'll have that over one of these cookies that Nikki Leo sent us.
I've got some gear for you.
Yeah, give me a new C26 hat. That'd be sweet. Thanks. Yeah. Can you autograph it for me?
Yeah.
But no, it is. And if you're, again, like, a lot of athletes trying to jump in and doing something, but would just heavily, before we get into some of these, got some pretty good questions to roll through. Before we get into those, to be totally honest, just make sure you're taking time for yourself to go for, this is also the time of year we get a lot of texts and emails. Like, hey, I know you've got choice and flexibility going, but I'm going to my in-laws. So if you could squeeze in like a 3-hour, 4-hour bike, that's, like mandatory, that would be great. But no, it's like, get out of the house, go for a walk, do things that just get outside and do something, no matter what it is. Take some time for yourself, even if it isn't a run or a ride or something structured. Just exercise, do something that's good for the soul, go to the coffee shop by yourself, read a book. It's a lot to handle. And the last thing you want to do, again, we mentioned this quite a few times, is go into the year stressed, sleep deprived, and a little bit fluffier than we usually do. That's like, this is a big party time of year. People get out and probably drink a little more than usual. They eat a little bit more than usual. They don't sleep as much. And it's like, okay, now you want to feel all those things and then ramp things up and, do like total transformation like the first week of the year. Listen, it's more than encouraged to let loose and have a little bit of fun, but, make sure you're taking care of yourself, not just physically, but also do the things you need to do mentally and emotionally. Set some boundaries, take care of yourself, and just get ready to have a rockin' good 2022.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, really. Before we get into this, I got a quick thought on that. It's, sometimes we get on the hamster wheel of triathlon, right? And we just keep hammering and hammering. And then all of a sudden this time of year comes around, and it's really a great time to kind of ground yourself and, do things that feel good and get your body kind of back in shape, whether that's, just body work and things like that make you feel good. And then you can kind of get back into it and go. And it's like, we worry about losing fitness so much. And I think it's, you put a early season race on the calendar and you just got done with one at the end of the year. And the next thing you know, you're wanting to get better at this sport, but you're not doing anything to your body to actually help it recover and be, kind of baseline. And I think that's a really important part of this time of year is to really do things. For me personally, I've been getting back into yoga, and it makes me feel good, because I can tell after 8 straight years of Ironman that, some things are getting a little out of whack, if you know what I mean. Like, for my right hip is ridiculously tighter than my left hip, for example. And, I'm just trying to work things like that out because, you get in that cycle, man. It's like, man, well, next year I'm going to do some stuff to, but then you kind of like just keep training and keep going hard. And next thing you know, you're just feeling the same all the time. And then it gets harder. Trust me, the more you do it over time, you keep beating yourself up and, being out of balance or whatever. And that could be mentally as well. I mean, all these kind of things, this is why, December rules are huge.
They are huge. And if you're a member of a gym, I love this time of year to tell athletes, like, go to the gym and go take like a random class. And that you don't really, I don't want to take a spin class because they're on these, they're not on the TT bike and I can't do Zwift on there. And, like, go do something like, take a yoga class. Take one of those, like, body pump or body assault manslaughter classes.
It'll
like
show you
how weak how weak you are. Like, we're all in relative shape, right? Like, we all have, there's all different kinds of shape. Like, you got endurance shape, you got short sprinty shape, but like just the imbalances and the different things and the classes you can take, it just exercise and learn a few things. Like, sometimes I think we get a little too confident in our overall ability and fitness while we are, to be serious, fitter than probably 99% of the planet. Everything is different, go out and play a pickup game of basketball where you're sprinting for 100 yards and you're stopping, like you'll find yourself a little bit more out of breath than you normally would. Do things that challenge you and kind of not make you feel uncomfortable, but they kind of put a little pep in your step. Like, what? I'm not as in shape, and they show you some things that you can maybe work on, in the early part of the year to maybe hone in on, like you said, imbalances, and go take your first yoga class or, do one of these like light body weight classes where you're like, they probably didn't look too hard. And then you can't walk for like 4 days, go do something, have some fun with it. And do things that'll, help you set up. And again, like this month, and even, depending on when your first race is, it is not about, and I had to mention this to a few athletes this morning in Training Peaks is this month is not about gain. It's about retain. You're not trying to gain a ton of fitness this month. The main goal is just to retain some. Like, you have to have these ups and downs and undulating, graphs and Training Peaks if you're obsessed with that in terms of load and fitness. You can't just always be trending up, or you're never going to get as far up as you want to because you end up crashing. Now is the time to just feel like, what? I retained a little fitness this week. You don't want to be totally sedentary and not do anything, because then I would consider that you're just basically losing, fitness. But do just enough to feel like, what, I'm retaining some fitness this week, because that's where you need to be, because it also keeps you engaged in that process and in the training kind of routine and behavior. That way, when January 1st does come, you know what, I can do some. And please, for all things holy, like, if you're traveling to see family, don't take your bike and your bike trainer and your mat and your fan and your block under your front wheel and your fancy Swift fan, or your computer desk and your don't take that shit. Just take your run shoes and call it a day. Like, let's just you don't want to be the relative and like, oh, here comes Timmy again with all of his triathlon gear, and it takes him like, hey, Timmy, I'm gonna help you in that. No, I got it, man. I got it. That's just got it. My Wahoo kicker snap, and I got to set it up perfectly and calibrate it. And they're like, yeah, well, we won't see Timmy for another 4 days. Enjoy your family and friends. Bring your run shoes. Do things. Don't isolate yourself even more than the majority of us already do. When it comes to training. First question.
First question.
Out of the books, out of the gate, which I think is a really good one. It is from Lisa. I had my tri-bike fit when I got it approximately 2 years ago. How often should I get a refit done? Excellent question, and the perfect time of year to have this done. There's a lot. I honestly think this is the most overlooked, least invested thing athletes do that could actually yield the most time saving when it comes to cycling and triathlon in general. I think to be, and I know a lot of bike fitters, and I know some really, really good ones, and also some really, really poor ones. Getting a great bike fit is priceless. And to be honest with you, and this is nothing against bike shop owners, but if you got your bike fit by the guy who sold you the bike, go somewhere else and get it done. I used to work in a bike shop, and the right bike for you is the one we had in stock. And that is just how it works. And plus, there are just a lot of things that go on to fitting yourself on a bike. Look for someone who's got a lot of experience, who does that as their profession. Like, fitting people on bikes is what they do. It's not an afterthought because you just purchased a $4,000, bike from them. But so just because you got one 2 years ago doesn't even you shouldn't be confident that was even the right fit, right? Like we talk about a lot, with athletes. They're like, yeah, I don't think my nutrition's that, they haven't really dived into perfecting their nutrition because it's kind of gone okay. And like, yeah, I think I got it kind of dialed in, but you're like, you might be missing like 10%, better of what you can get out of yourself by actually dialing in nutrition. You just haven't had any red flags. Same could go for, the fit on your bike. Get fit on your bike, honestly, once a year. It might not be a huge change. And if you have a really good fitter, they won't charge you for basically no changes. But so many things happen over the course of the year. You might become more flexible. You might become less flexible. You might be going from short course racing to long course racing, where you probably don't want to be as aggressive in your position because you'll be on the bike a lot longer, and then you have to run a little bit shorter. Or you might be going from long course to short course, where you're going to have the opportunity to maybe get a little more aggressive, than you normally would, and that's also going to yield imbalances, in your musculature. So, but the biggest thing and the best thing you can get from a great fit is comfort and being in because listen, you can be super aerodynamic, but if it's not comfortable, guess what? You're going to be sitting up after about 30 or 40 miles. And so it's about comfort and time savings. And the more comfortable you are on your bike, guess what? The more you're going to want to ride it. Like I don't work with any athletes who are chronically uncomfortable with their saddle or with their fit. They're like, you know what? I just couldn't get through like barely 45 minutes. I had back pain. I had neck pain. My lower back was hurting. I'm getting saddle sores. I can't wait to get back on tomorrow. They don't ever. They're like, I'm just starting to hate my bike. And once you kind of have that thought process of about any of the three, you're not going to go back and do it. But when athletes love to ride their bike because it's comfortable and their fit is great and they can go for hours and hours, they want to ride their bike more. So I say once a year, and if anything, if you go back and they're like, yeah, you look pretty good, or maybe you can make this small minor tweak, it's always good to get checked in. And even if you feel physically good, the amount of times people mess with their own bikes without messing with one thing. You could have a seat post that slowly kind of crept its way down, and you went from a certain saddle height, then you got it crept down. Now your leg length is different, because your saddle was dropped and the seat post was dropped. Like, these are all things you need to have figured out. And this is a great time to do it because you're going to be on your trainer. And if you're in a new position, now's a great time to get on there and try out a new position. But I say at least once a year, have it tweaked, have it looked at, or if you haven't ever had that done, take time to get it professionally fed.
Yeah, you said that's one of the most overlooked things, huh?
Because
I agree.
Because no one you can't buy a helmet, right? Or a power meter or a thing. It's like, go get it done. And it'll make life easier. Yeah.
I actually got lucky this year because I got that new bike, and remember I made the most unbelievable mistake where I wanted to raise the headset, and I kind of measured my old bike, and I kind of gave these guys a few measurements over Trek, and they ended up doing it, and I got on, and that was like the best fit I'd ever had. Mm-hmm. It was just complete luck, I think, almost, but obviously I had a good fit, I think, before. Yeah. So my old bike felt so much more comfortable. And then I raised those up a little bit, and it was a really it might have saved my season, actually.
Saved your season?
Yeah, because I was so aggressive, man.
Yeah,
that's the other thing.
Very
like,
aggressive. Yeah,
we want to be aggressive, right? But like you said,
aggressive.
is the comfort level. I mean, it was like 1 or 2 inches maybe difference in aero. I know that matters to a lot of people, but for me, it was just torture to kind of be bent in that kind of position. So, yeah, it is cool. And I call it some of those guys out there, I see them, they're kind of at the dinner table on their bike. Kind of look. I like that, man.
Yeah, sitting up like
man, they look super comfortable.
Yeah, you look like you're driving a food truck. You don't like you're on your triathlon bike. Get it done. Take care of it. Knock it out. Matt Clark, one of our athletes, solid dude, nicest guy on the planet.
Tough question here.
Yeah, I'll let you handle this one. What are some tips on balancing a new baby in Ironman training?
Well, I would switch back and forth different arms a lot.
You don't want to get any imbalances, right?
Yeah, you want to carry in both sides. It's sort of a yoga thing.
Listen, this question should say, how do you balance having a new baby or having a new puppy? Because I honestly see that affect people just as severely as when someone has a new baby.
It's all about sleep, right?
It's all about sleep and guilt. That is all it's about. Sleep and guilt. I mean, you still feel guilt with Maddie. How old is she?
Yeah, she's like 12.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you don't
walk
her.
Best thing I ever did was get the doggy door.
Yeah.
That was good. They have those for babies to go to the bathroom?
Not yet. I mean, I think that's frowned upon. No, listen,
There's a playpen outside.
I did this training for Ironman Wisconsin and had a really good result. Priorities and happiness. I mean, in all honesty, one of the things I would highly suggest is obviously one of the, the contrast between, getting a new puppy and having a new baby is you usually have 9 months to know you're about to have a baby. And most people get puppies on about a 2-week notice, or less. It's like, I think we should go get a puppy. And then next thing you know, they're like, that was a mistake. Or hopefully you keep it because, puppies are not gifts or long-term commitments.
Yes, they are.
Is you have time to prepare. You have time to maybe get ahead in your training, depending how things are going. But the biggest piece is like you said, stress, sleep, and sleep. Those are the things that are going to dominate your daily headline for life. After you have it for life. Basically for life. I mean, it just really is. It is all about you, and you're going to have to really manage your time wisely, communicate the most effectively you've ever communicated in your entire life with your spouse to make sure that, you are not overextending your time, because if they start to hate you for biking too much or going out for runs and they're stuck at home, like, there has to be trade-offs. Has to be. And this is a piece of advice, not that I'm like, the dad of the year or anything, but like one of the things that I always suggest to people when they're like, yeah, we're about to have a baby, you got any advice, is take time alone for yourself, make sure your spouse takes time alone for themselves, and then make sure the two of you take time alone away from the baby. Outside of that, just make sure it stays alive and it's healthy. Other than that, just survive. That really is it. But most people don't take time away because they feel guilty, right, for not having that time. But if you're training for any kind of a race, prioritize and just look at things in a way of like, how can I maximize the time that I'm using? Whether it's you might want to go, which is what I did. I ended up doing the most of volume I could possibly do before Hayden was born. And that was Hayden was born like 7 weeks out before Ironman Wisconsin. Before that, I put in my longest runs, my longest rides were all before he was born. And you would think that like, oh, well, that's not really how it, it usually is, and it's not. But I was kind of preparing for life to be challenging, for a little bit. And it was actually ended up being really challenging with him and his time in the NICU and the stress that brought on. But what it allowed me to do was not stress as much, that I hadn't done maybe enough work, that I had and that I needed to do. And what I was able to do then was I just kind of went shorter and harder. Instead of doing, 5.5, 6 hour rides, I kind of scaled it down to 4 and just made them really, 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 really hard. Same thing for running. I scaled back on swimming a lot less, just because one, it was my strength, but B, it was like the most time, to be away. It's not like, you can't hop on your trainer to close to, a good ratio of 1-to-1. Same for running. Swimming is one, you got to kind of leave the house and be away. And if you're a new parent, you kind of like to be by the phone in case something happens, because the last thing you want to probably do is head to the pool, get in a good, 4,500 swim, and, get out of the pool, and you wake up, or you get out and you got 6 missed calls from your spouse, and a few texts that are like,
that's a
call me
great feeling
immediately. And you're like, shit, what happened? The baby's sick. And they're like, can you swing by Taco Bell and get me a number 3? It's like, these are the serious things that you have to think about. But, communication, and just understand that things aren't going to go perfectly. And I think, honestly, like, if you can understand that and just be flexible with it, you can still have a really good build up.
I think you said something in there that needs a little more investigation.
What, Taco Bell number 3?
That one. But the idea that you kind of put in volume early and then went hard as you're going towards the race with some shorter stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we need to go into that now, but I'm very intrigued by that, because I feel like one of my best races that happened with me.
Chattanooga, yeah. A lot of volume.
I don't think it was a lot of hard trainer rides, shorter, 3.5 hours or so. Not really much long riding. Well, I worked it hard though, and it sounds like you did too. I mean, I think, sometimes, man,
if you look at traditional, and we'll veer back to your questions here, just hold tight. If you look at, and I think this is one of the misconceptions, this is something that I'll actually talk through in length on our Zoom call on Friday with our team, is that we always get a lot of questions about, I've got an early season race. Am I going to still be in base phase, when I do this, or build phase, or race specific phase? And I'm like, that, like, those are terms that are like blanketed across all endurance sports, base, build, race specific, muscular endurance, all these things. And like a lot of coaches don't necessarily use that blanket methodology when they plan training. They do things in terms of blocks, right? And because you don't want to, most athletes don't really want to, nor should you, just go into your first, if you're doing like an early season, April, March race, what you don't want to do is go into that and think, you know what, I'm just going to only do zone 1, zone 2 base work, leading into it, and then expect a good result. You want to put a little bit of icing on the cake. So really it's best to kind of go with blocks, blocks and, mesocycles, however you want to call it. I always call them blocks because it's easier. In the word block more accurately depicts my education and vocabulary than cycles and meso and so it's about building things together. But if you look at traditional base build phases, most of the time you will see your largest volume in the build phase. And so if you think about it from like a training stress standpoint, you might build up to, like, let's say for an Ironman, 5.5, 6 hour rides through a build phase. But if you're an athlete who's inching their way closer to like the mid 5s or even low 5s and the 4s for an Ironman, 70.3 rides, you might have a long rides of like, 3.5, really kind of overdoing the time with easy stuff. And then when you get closer to race day, you're looking at like, 2 hours and 15, 2.5 hour bikes that more resemble the intensity demand of the day. And so you might, go out for an Ironman ride, and you might ride chill for 6.5 hours, and that might get you, a training stress of, 300 points. Or you could, it is all easy, and it was more time and easier at an easier effort. But you could also go out for 5 hours or 4:45 and, let's say go easy for 2 hours and basically just burn it for the last 2 and still create 300. And that's what they say that's a way of like kind of sharpening your sword, if you will, of kind of putting the icing on the cake there at the end. The training stress is equal, but the time is more condensed. And so you do see that a lot. It's not that, strange or odd. It's just something that athletes usually think, oh, why am I not doing so much or so long, right? Or you might have an athlete who runs 2 hours or 2 hours and 15 minutes easy, right? That's like they're building up their aerobic capacity, their time on their feet, but they're just doing the build phase, doing 2 hours and 15, maybe 2 hours and 20 minutes, 30-minute easy runs. They might be getting them 15, 16 miles, and then when you're kind of peak towards the race, that might be like a negative split 220, and instead of getting 15 to 16 miles or 17, you might be getting 20. So the intensity is going to be raised up. It's more race specific, quote unquote, race specific, to do things closer to intensity that you might race at. But then again, it's also very dependent on what is your race pace, right? Or your race effort. Most people are going to spend, 90% of people doing Ironman are going to spend all day outside of the swim in zone 1 or zone 2, just kind of making their way. A lot of athletes kind of find themselves on like the rivet between like zone 2 and zone 3. And that's why I think racing a 70.3 is so hard, because it's not zone 2. It's like zone 3 from the gate. And you're like zone 3 in it for 4 hours, 4.5, 5 hours to like race it. And that's something that you kind of have to practice going into that, as it was bringing in some higher intensity and some harder work. But it's kind of putting in the icing on the cake and getting the most out of hopefully the aerobic capacity and the aerobic development you've, honed in on for the first, because that year I did, and that's a perk obviously of like, having a baby versus a dog, or like another huge life obstacle, is that you got 9 months to prep, right? You kind of know what's coming down the pipe. That year we moved from Nashville to Kansas City. And then about a week later, I took on a new job. And then a week later I went to Muncie and raced. And then I got shingles. So I was out, for a bit. And so I had some really, really good base, but then I knew, I was like, all right, Hayden was due in July, and I was like, I better get going, and just put in as much volume as I could before he was born. And then it was basically about, just kind of get in what I can get in, but make it hard to kind of keep what I had from a distance standpoint. But there's a lot of ways, and there's a lot of training research coming out too, that's like the best way to kind of, HIT training is very popular because it's exciting and it kind of keeps you engaged. It makes you feel like you really earned it and did something, and you're improving because you went hard. Mm-hmm. But there's an article I was reading 2 weeks ago. It talked about kind of layering polarized training, which is, mostly, zone 1, zone 2 work with some threshold or, tempo or VO2 stuff sprinkled in less than, 20% of the time. They kind of talk about, going through, an 8 to 10 week cycle where you're just doing that. But then right there towards the end, for like two weeks, you do a bunch of high intensity stuff where you might every ride you might do is high intensity, for 2 or 3 weeks. But the rub on that is that your improvement, all of your improvement you're going to have in that cycle will happen within like 10 to 14 days. But most people stretch it out to like 15, 20, 3 months, because all they want to do is hop on their bike and smash themselves, when the most there, because they see quick improvement, very quick, high response. They'll see it within 2 weeks and they're thinking, oh dude, I've got this. Like, I'm going to keep going at this exponential rate and trending up higher, when the reality is like, you just got what you got in 2 weeks, and you're probably going to get much more. Even if you extended it 6 weeks, that's when you revert back to more polarized zone 1, zone 2. So it's more about the icing on the cake, and that's what I kind of chose to do that year, and it ended up working out, fairly well for me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always like that. I mean, I think specifically for the bike is what I think about is I just like going a little harder on the bike for some reason, and shorter. I don't know. It seems to work for me, because those long rides have always just kind of wore me out, and my point is like, how do you get to that race, feeling as good as you can possibly feel? And if you're kind of dragging through the whole season with long rides all the time, some people handle them better. I'm just not that type of person. Yeah. I'd rather go out and like thrash for 3 hours or whatever, and then just kind of eat a pizza,
or some trunk cookies.
But I just think it's interesting. I think it kind of depends on the person. A lot of it, some people handle longer stuff better, slower better. And some people like little intensity. Like if I can, ramp that way up, I know I have a lot more headroom. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So there's that whole thing too. Yeah.
The biggest thing though, and this is the last thing we'll say on that is, the only thing you have to be really, really, really careful of, and this is something that I did and have really done since then in a lot of the training that I do and our athletes do, is I started to put all the intensity at the back of training. There's a lot of research too that, back end intensity stuff really, the adaptation is really, really good. But when you're already going to be stressed out or sleep deprived, like you normally, you probably do when you have a newborn. And if you have that like perfect, peaceful, sleeping child that life isn't different, go bite a wall. Because most of us don't have that. Is you can't just raise stress or intensity in training and expect it to go well if you're still suffering on sleep. So what I always did was, even if I had like a 4-hour ride or on the trainer, the first 2 hours were all chill, because that gave me realistically enough time to see if I really, 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 really did feel good. And if I really, really, really did think I had it in me. And if I did, then I went for it. If I didn't, then I just kept it easy. And that's again, it comes down to decision making. And I was joking with, you and I talked this a long time ago, was, MEPS strategy, was Chris Sisk, one of our athletes, was like, hey, I'm just kind of picking and choosing what I can right now. Life's pretty stressful. I was like, listen, honestly, like, even when I'm mapping out my own weeks, I kind of map it out, and then I kind of open up Training Peaks every day and look at it like I look at my pantry. I'll open it up and I think, what feels right today? Like, what kind of snack do I want? What looks good today? One day it might be Frosted Flakes. One day it might be, dates and peanut butter. One day it might be a salad. One day it might be a pizza. But it really is, there is a lot to be said. And we went into this at length after reading through one of the Cody Beals, articles he wrote. This is probably 2 or 3 years ago, when he wrote after some of his huge success and winning Ironman, Chattanooga, and Tremblant back-to-back in 2 months. He basically said, like, hey, I really kind of even don't know really what I'm going to do until I wake up the next day, and kind of have and kind of know how I'm feeling or know, because there's a lot to that, and that's a whole nother topic for a different day. But listening hard and letting your body be kind of the final answer instead of your mind is a huge thing, and it is a great way to keep you healthy and put you in the best place to have the best race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that. I mean, that's a common sense principle, but it is hard, I suppose, to do. But man, I'm a huge warm up guy. Like, if I go into a HIIT workout too quick, then it's terrible. Mm-hmm. But like you're saying, you give yourself some time to figure it out if you got it. I mean, I just think that's a good habit to practice, because that's something you can execute in a race too. You can kind of like figure out what you got and take it in stages, and things change within 20, 30 minutes. You might start feeling terrible and then let it warm up and then be like, dang, I got it. And you go up and down in the races too. So it's like, it's just a good habit, I think, to pay attention and understand your body and what it's telling you.
Speaking of that, Mark Strickland, what's your rule about training, quote, parentheses, indoors with a chest cold? Please and thank you. We have a pretty not firm rule, but a highly suggested rule is if it's anything above the chin, just kind of carry on as usual. Like if you have like a head cold, more than likely you can just kind of keep training and doing the same thing, like no deviating, keep the same thing. However, if you have something that's like below the chin, like something in your chest, like a real heavy chest cold, stop all training, or like at the very maximum do, easy spinning, or, something all zone 1 and zone 2. But like the last thing people need to, like, oh, well, I have a chest cold and I'm coughing up stuff and I feel really bad. So I figured I'd do some high intensity stuff, really kind of cough it out. I'm like, right, so yeah. You deplete your immune system and stress it out to the max to where it can't do its job. Going back to like the podcast we had, about Starkey had on, he was like, the best piece of advice he gave was, as soon as I feel like I'm starting to really get sick, I sleep for like as much as I can for 48 hours. And then I'm pretty much ready to rock and roll, and that's just, you have to be smart again, especially if it's below the chin, like in the chest, something like that. If it's like a head cold or something like that, usually, just take it easy, and you can still do stuff and still be proactive and progress. Just be smart about it, and don't hop on the trainer for, a 20-minute FTP test.
Mark, I thought you were getting over that.
He's still got it. It's just like he's still got a little bit of a head cold, a little bit of
yeah. Well, of course, this was last week now, or whatever. This is going to be like a week and a half before you. Hopefully, you're doing good.
Hopefully, you don't have another one.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, well, and there's something to be said about that blood pumping through thing. But I don't think you need to do high intensity stuff. You just need to kind of walk or something, maybe, or
stay loose.
Easy, yes. Keep it loose.
Keep it flowing.
Drink a lot of water.
Yeah, drink a lot of water. Matthew Kolb, what's up with the Norwegian triathletes? Great question. And it's not just Norwegian triathletes. It is Norwegians in general. In endurance sports right now, they are really like producing. So obviously, we're mentioning triathlon because it's like the most obvious most obvious one for us, but
They got some hoopers?
They do not have any hoopers, no. We're not going to talk about the Norwegian NFL team either. But you've even got like they've got, I think, they have like two siblings, like I'm not even gonna like begin to
give it a shot.
No, I'm not even gonna pretend to like pronounce their last name. But you've got some guys doing like the mile over there that are just unreal. And I think oftentimes we put weight. The Norwegians will always tell you that, and like if you listen to the podcast we've been interviewed on, they're always going to say, "Well, it's about intensity control. It's about intensity control. It's about it." Yeah, it's always been about intensity control. And you see Gustav Iden and Kristen Blumenfeld, like they have obviously like the two names that most triathletes are hearing the most about right now because they've just blown the doors off. I mean, Blumenfeld won. Right now, he has his fastest 70.3 time ever. He has the fastest Ironman time ever, and he's an Olympic gold medalist. And then his counterpart and training partner is a 70.3 world champion 2 years in a row. Yeah, so do they know what they're doing? 100%. But we always tend to kind of throw like one thing I will say that they're probably doing more than anybody is they are doing, like, they're basically testing their blood lactate in session to really determine intensity control. Where there's to go, how hard is hard enough? Like, because, and we've mentioned this a lot of times, they want to know what effort really is threshold for that day based on their blood lactate. What is the minimal effective dose we can get to get the best response? Is it, 10 1-minute all outs, or is it just doing like 2 6-minute efforts at slightly lower intensity, and that's going to get the job done today? So they literally have a coach that measures their blood lactate, like pricks their finger and takes it to figure out during session. Guess what? You ain't got that. Like, I'm sorry. No offense, Mike, but I'm
put that into our system.
I'm never going to have you.
The club now.
Yeah, it comes with the club now. When you come for your hub visit, Mike's going to prick you with a paper clip, and we're going to drop it in the coffee filter and see what happens.
Just text me that number, and I'll come together with a
workout. It sounds about like 85%. But so what they've also is like Norwegians are known for their hard work. They are known for the fact that they actually get out and participate in endurance sports from like the time they can walk, right? They do cross country skiing. They do all these winter sports. Like, they have years and years and years of being active. Like, they're not a sedentary fat ass country like, frankly, most of the United States is. Like, they're not probably sitting around doing video games for 5 hours a day. They're out doing stuff no matter what time of year it is. So they have this huge built up aerobic system already. But then you also add in like, a squad environment like they've had where you just happen to have, right, 1 or 2 people come through at the exact same time to push each other. That can't be replicated, right? Like, it's like having someone who's just about perfect your speed, that's around the same age, it's developing at the same rate, is going after the same goals. That's gonna push you, right? To have that, they have a great culture, but their big thing is always intensity control, and that's honestly that's what coaching is. I'm not suggesting that we are up to the snuff of the Norwegian head coach, but I'm saying like it's all about intensity control. And most people, I think, go have this, in order to, to be really fast, we have to go spend, X amount of time above threshold or above at VO2 max. And that's really just not the case for the most part. I think you'd be shocked at, like the article I was reading about the Norwegian brothers who were like just unreal at the mile and half mile, or 800 mile and a little bit over that. There's just a whole lot. And I think that's like where you can't go apples to apples, is like when they're training for a week, they're doing like 20 to 30 hours of volume in a week. And probably 20 plus of that is just zone 2, the lowest threshold to get the most amount of work, or the biggest response. We always say, like, hopefully if you go to the doctor and they're like, 200 milligrams is going to be just enough to take care of this. I would hope most doctors are going to be, 200 is good. Let me go ahead and give you 800, because that's really going to make sure it's not something you have to deal with. Honestly, the Norwegians might be like, 195 is probably good enough. Let's go just under and let's see how it goes, instead of always going over. That's like a societal thing too. We've become so accustomed to now. It's like longer and harder is probably always the answer. It's got to be better to go longer and to go harder. Forget sleeping. I can sleep and I'm dead. It's like, let me work 65 hours a week. That's going to do me good. It's always a longer and harder kind of syndrome that we've kind of adopted as a society as like a badge of honor, when really you're just probably running yourselves into the ground, and you're going to live in a state of either low level burnout until you get to the point to where it's an extreme burnout and you have nowhere to go but to stop completely. You have a mental, emotional breakdown. You're physically burnt out and overtrained. And that's just, it's honestly become just like accepted. Like, today's workout was great. I was on the floor throwing up. Like, what? Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not how it's supposed to be.
No,
it's not. Yeah.
That's always kind of been my mantra, actually. I was talking about that the other day when we were at lunch, about how, like, I'm not a big, take medicine type person, but like if I need ammonium AD or something, I'll take half. I kind of always underdose. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think there's something to that. But on the other side of that coin, when I got in this sport, because I didn't know anything about endurance sports when I got in this sport. Nothing.
Oh, I remember.
You remember. And, I was always shocked that people from the north were so good. I remember I was talking about there's some Canadians at the time that were pretty good, I think. And then later I found out that Wisconsin has like one of the best cross country teams in America. Mm-hmm. And they're dominant in the Big Ten, whatever. But I was like, but I guess it makes sense. But it always seemed weird to me that people from cold climates would be really good at this sport.
I mean, let's not go that far.
I mean, they can't get outside,
so what do? You sit inside. We also talked about the state of Wisconsin, like, drinks so heavily that it's like normalized.
I know. Well, obviously not some people.
Yes, we can't put both those together.
I mean, of course you have, speed skaters and things like that.
That makes sense. It's true. There's these get out. It's honestly it's getting outside. It's like the adoption of winter, of a year-round sport activity to get out and do cross country. Like, I'm seriously jealous of climates that are like to that extent, to where when they have a winter, they have a winter. Like, they have snow. Like, they go out and, like, we had athletes who were like, it's cross country ski season. Yeah. They get out in the cross country ski. We have other athlete, Iona, who lives in Sweden, I think, or Switzerland, one of those two S's. And she was like, yeah, she's doing like a 30K ice skate race.
Oh, no, that sounds
fun. Like, what? Yeah, you're not going to find that in Chattanooga.
But
it's like you have all these opportunities to not just sit on your butt, but like get out on skis and do things that are challenging. Get on your fat bike and you have enough snow, like, and you can do that no matter where you are. But I do think, and to be honest, I think part of it is the change of sport specific that makes them do it for longer. Because you can train as a triathlete for X amount of time and only ride one bike and do this and do that. But instead of getting stuck inside for 4 months, you're out on your skis. You're out on your fat bike. You're out, doing your cross-country skiing, your ice skate. You're doing something that still has a very, very high demand for aerobic capacity and strength, but you're doing it different. So you don't get solely burnt out by the guy or the girl who spends every waking moment and every session 95% of the year on their trainer, stuck in the side room, and you wonder why you get burnt out, or runs the same exact run route or sits or only runs on the treadmill and wonders why they get burnt out. It's because of those opportunities, which, to be honest, I mean, we all have them, right? Depending on where we live. I mean, I have snow, but you can change it up. And I do think that, I'm sure there's not a scientific, paper done on that, on, attention span and happiness of endurance athletes and cold climates, but there's got to be something to it, because I mean, I've read it already this morning, and some of the athletes that we have in Minnesota and Michigan and other areas are like, man, I was outside this week on the fat bike and it was awesome. Like, you didn't hear that from like the guys on the trainer, doing like, I hopped on my bike in my pain cave and it was awesome. They were like, they're like, I'm hating the bike right now. I'm like, just get off. Meanwhile, in Minnesota, they're like, out in there, dressed up like, Clark Griswold and like rocking their, fat tire bikes going down the Greenway. Jealous.
Definitely something about the brisk.
I'm telling you, there is.
You're a believer.
I'm a huge believer. I used to be adverse to it, but now I'm a huge believer. And I'm like, we're also a believer in you. We believe in you.
We believe in you.
We believe in you. We believe in you.
Yeah.
But maybe we should paint a mural, like they do in other cities. Like, we believe in Nashville. Do you? You just got here from Los Angeles. Do you really believe in Nashville? Because that's like my biggest pet peeve as a person who's born and raised there. Like this, we talked about that the other day too.
Yeah, there's a beer.
We
called
believe in Nashville,
a brewery.
You don't even know anything about Nashville. You just, you probably watched the show. You moved here from Los Angeles, and now you're one of those people. Go back where you belong. May not live there anymore, but still, go back where you belong. If you didn't know where Becker's Bakery was, you don't know. Where Nashville is. You don't know, probably.
I don't know.
Becker's Bakery used to be like the only place besides this like druggy car wash on
in
12 South area. Because when I was in Lipscomb, we didn't go past the park to get to where like Edley's is. We didn't go past it because it was that dangerous. People get beat up on their bikes. And now it's like it's like we believe in Nashville Road.
Oh, I miss those days when people got beat up on their bikes.
I know. It's like I ran through there when I was visiting my mom 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was like, it's like clothing stores, and I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to come back later and buy $110 T-shirt that says like has like the Tennessee state on it with like a heart and an asterisk on it for like $120. You're like, but it's made of sustainable weave. Proceeds go to this kid in Jamaica, and you're like, for $120, and how much are you giving away? But they'll take the picture, they'll walk around the corner, stand by a mural, post on Instagram with wings and angels, and in the background.
Hey, that's for the aspiring country stars shop, man.
We believe in Nashville.
We believe it.
We believe in high-priced housing and traffic and yearly tornadoes
and fake country singers.
Oh God, no kidding. Fake country singers. I got all my tattoos on Music Row. Only thing good to come from there.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Neither one of us Music City Tattoo, Laura.
Hey, can I just say something about that?
Are we airing grievances right now?
No, I was going to give you a compliment.
Oh, okay.
Because one thing I noticed when we kind of first met, and like we go through the winter and stuff, you'd always wear flip flops, even though it would be cold out. And I was kind of always like, what does he do
that? Yeah.
But now I'm into it. I've been into it for a while now. Like even when it's like super cold, and it's interesting how your feet don't get cold.
They don't. And they
get colder in shoes.
Here's the deal. Like
for me,
people would judge heavily.
I'm sure
my flip flop year roundness. And they're like, "Why your feet not cold?" I'm like, I'm literally walking from my car inside the grocery store, and you've got the heat on. Why do I need shoes? Like, it takes me like 2 seconds, and they just don't get that cold. Like they're extremely. They don't get that cold.
They can sometimes.
I mean, they can.
I noticed.
But I mean, even if it was snowing, I'd rock the flip flops. Yeah, it's about freedom. Wiggle your toes. And I hate I hate socks in general. I feel claustrophobic in socks. But try it. Yeah. Just try it. Walking like, oh, you're going to get sick. I'm not going to get sick from not wearing flip-flops, If anything, I might get athlete's foot. Other than that, I'm not going to get sick.
I think you build a stronger body.
Yeah, from the toes up.
Yeah, starting at the toes.
We'll come back to you again next week. We'll do some more Q&As. Listen, we'll get to most of them. And if anything, they spark a good conversation that hopefully you enjoyed today. We'll come again later, next week. Whatever week it is, whatever day it is, whatever. We're turning through these. We're burning them. Hope you have an awesome weekend and an awesome week. We appreciate you. Again, if you're interested in the club package or coaching, hop on over our website, C26triathlon.com. If you need anything from Mike, he is at crushingiron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me, I'm at C26coach@gmail.com.
All right. Nice job today.
See ya.